Welcome to the Thinking Practitioner Podcast,
a podcast where we dig into the fascinating issues, conditions, and quandaries in the massage and manual therapy world today.
I'm Whitney Lowe.
And I'm Till Luca.
Welcome to the Thinking Practitioner.
And welcome to the Thinking Practitioner Podcast, which is supported by ABMP, the Associated Bodywork and Massage Professionals. ABMP membership gives professional practitioners like you a package including individual liability insurance, free continuing education and quick reference apps, online scheduling and payments with Pocket Suite, and much more. ABMP's CE courses, podcast, and Massage and Bodywork magazine always feature expert voices and new perspectives in the profession, including those from Till and myself. And Thinking Practitioner listeners can save on joining ABMP at abmp.com/thinking. This episode is also supported by the Academy of Clinical Massage. And if you are a massage therapist looking to elevate your practice and truly make a difference in your clients' lives, our new in-depth orthopedic massage online courses are designed just for you. This training is fully online, so you can benefit from the study wherever you are located. So please feel free to drop by our website at Academy of Clinical Massage to learn more. So hello, everyone. Till is off this week, and I am delighted to be joined by my friend Paula Nutting from Australia. Paula, welcome to the Thinking Practitioner.
Thank you, Whitney, and how lovely to actually say friends, because that's what I feel like we are. We've been in the industry for a long time.
I was going to say, I was trying to remember how long it was and when we first met, but it's kind of fading off into the distance somewhere now. Do you remember, like when we met?
I think it was one of the conferences down. I'm thinking it was in Melbourne that you were at, and that was probably about 12 years ago.
Yeah. So wonderful. Well, for Paula, for our listeners that might not be familiar with you and your work, I would like you to take a few minutes to tell us about yourself, a little bit about your background, and kind of like what you're doing nowadays and what you've been up to for a bit there.
Sure. Excellent. Thanks so much, Whitney. So originally was a registered nurse years and years ago, and then went into personal training and aerobics, and then got excited about the massage industry. So moved across from one side of our allopathic work to more of a complementary medicine model, and did my diploma, and then had the opportunity to do the degree in health science, musculoskeletal. So that was my course of journeying. And then I treat from my home clinic, always have had a home practice, as well as teaching both online and face-to-face courses. Mm-hmm. And it's mostly in musculoskeletal dysfunction, but it can be anything from acute to subacute to chronic.
Yeah, wonderful. So I want to hear a little bit more about that in terms of your background in making that transition. I didn't remember knowing that you had been a nurse before, so that's an interesting part of that process. So what sort of caught your eye? What brought your attention to the world of massage from what you were doing before?
I worked in intensive care unit at one of the biggest hospitals in the Southern Hemisphere at Royal Brisbane. And I suddenly realized I was going in only wanting to look after the people who were paralyzed, sedated, ventilated, all the machines, everything that went bing, bing, bing. And I completely lost my empathy. Mm-hmm. Like there was just nothing more in the tank. And a girlfriend of mine said, hey, I'm going to go and do an 8-week massage course. Because in those days it was just a completely different system. We have a health training package that is nationally recognized in Australia.
Yeah.
But prior to that, you could just do anything and then put your shingle up. So I found that it was really lovely to be able to integrate with people, touch and time, because we have both of those that most other professions don't have. And the fact that I actually allow space for good treatment, hands-on skills that we learned through this one guy. And then I went from there. I thought, I'm going to actually have to do a proper diploma. Mm-hmm. And in those days, our diplomas, again, was not the health training package. We had a lot more content in our packages then. But because when we completed the 2-year diploma, I had background in allopathic and fitness and health, as well as what I'd done. And the head of faculty had asked me if I'd teach for some 4 units in the diploma, and which I graciously accepted. Mm-hmm. And then we went from there. We started doing the health training package in musculoskeletal therapy, and we were invited to do the degree while we were teaching. So
Mhm.
That was a 3-year, normally a 3-year.
Yeah. So what year roughly was this when you were doing this training and making that transition?
I'm looking at my paperwork up here.
Yeah.
2000 and when did I start? God, it seems to be. I've been training for like 28 years.
Uh-huh.
So I think the musculoskeletal course we completed in 2007.
Yeah. So has the training requirements for becoming a massage therapist changed significantly since the time when you were doing that?
My hat, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would like to say it's become excellent, but I think we've got too many hands in the pot, and it's actually softened it all. So it's not as there's not the scope for schools to be able to teach what they want as much as what they think that the public health risk safety. Sorry, I'm just putting this phone on silent. I didn't realize it was on. Yeah, so it's blanded down. The things that we learned were quite in depth. We did a lot of orthopedic testing when we went through. We did a lot of nerve flossing, tethering. We did a lot of muscle energy techniques, myofascial release techniques.
Now, so this was in your basic training programs that you had at that level. So wow.
Yeah, sports injury management 1 and 2, where we were learning how to tape.
What was the length of that program? Was it in clock hours or?
Oh, that was yeah, because now they do them in clock hours, or they do them, but back then it was 4 semesters full time.
Okay. So you said about 2 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you remember the book, McGee's Orthopedic Assessment?
Of course. Yeah. The Bible on all that stuff.
We had to learn that.
Wow. That's heavy. That's a bit of overkill, but
It was totally overkill. And we were being taught by physiotherapists and osteopaths primarily. So if you were lucky enough to have a teacher in the class that was an osteopath, they taught you extra tips and skills. If you were lucky enough to have a physiotherapist, they go, well, we would do this, but you can't because it would be out of your scope. So you just refer them to me.
Right. An interesting twist on there.
Yeah. But the musculoskeletal therapy, that degree only went for a certain length of time. That was probably 2 years. And then it's been disbanded, and it's been fed into what we call our myotherapy advanced diploma. So it's a nationally recognized course.
So is it roughly the same number of hours or same length of the program now, or is it?
No, that's slightly less. I'm working in collaboration with one of our private health groups here in Australia, and they're trying to set up an associate degree, which would be like that, what we call it QF7. So we have an Australian standard or framework that we work through. So it's really structured in Australia. It means that if you get taught in Perth, you go halfway through you might do your college tutorage in Perth, you can go anywhere else in Australia and your qualification will be accepted. It's not like in America you have the chapters and one chapter isn't transportable to another chapter.
Yeah, there's it's this, state by state licensure thing, and it is definitely not very portable. So we're trying to work on that part of the process right now. But I'm curious too, because, I know the training here in the U.S. is significantly different than in some other places. And one of the big things that we grapple with here is, because the basic training is a bit less than what it sounds like you're talking about in the programs there. There's sort of this division over here between massage as a sort of wellness service that might be done in a relaxation environments versus the more kind of medical or clinical applications. But it sounds like the training that everybody's going through a much more rigorous sort of medically oriented training program. Is that correct?
Yeah, it kind of is getting a little bit. It's chunking away from either end. So we used to have a certificate 4, which would be what we would call the wellness program. So that would be 1 year, and at the end, they would have the skills to do soft tissue work, take a good history, like a SOAP, so subjective but they wouldn't be going into the in-depth where we do extra assessment, take active, passive, resistive, some orthopedics, and where that would feed into our therapeutic model versus our wellness model. Nowadays, they seem to be doing less of the orthopedic work. They seem to be doing less of the high-end stuff. So they're adding a little bit where the people who would normally do a certificate for have to go through, and they can complete their diploma in as little as 12 months, sadly.
Yeah. So, well, how does the public, is that a challenge for the public to recognize the differences in training that people have? Because that's one of the things that we've grappled with a lot over here as we talk about sort of split credentialing. When, how would people know the difference about, the different levels of training? Has that been a challenge?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of we have, because I'm with Massage and Myotherapy Australia, the old AAMT, we've always had a great structure where if someone rang me and said, listen, I'm after a massage therapist in Albion, what are you looking for? And I would normally put them up to the Australian Massage Directory so they can have a look online, and people can put their qualifications in a space where they can look up. So it's like a Google for massage.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, mine's got musculoskeletal therapy, specializing in chronic blah, 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 blah. But you'll know that there might be people that come in that say, I've got, would specialize in lomi lomi or kahuna or reflexology. To break it down to wellness, I think we kind of just go most of the wellness at places like the Marriott and the Siebel and the Hilton, where you know that they're day spa focused.
Yeah.
Most of those therapists will not have anything more than the minimum standard they all have, as you have over there, you all have to have continued professional education.
Yeah.
So they have some, but they will be delving into the depths that we require, like the higher education. When I need 50 credit points a year, if I had a diploma, I need 40. If I tapped out a certificate for, I would need 30 CPE
I see.
points.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of scaled. It's scaled down at the different levels there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. One of the other things I was curious about, how has it been for integration with the other parts of the healthcare system? Like, is massage covered at all for, let's say, health insurance at all in Australia, or is it, how is that handled?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Whitney. Yes, because that could be a two-edged sword. We have the private health funds will give rebates for massage. We were trying to fight to get Medicare. So Medicare is where there's I think there's 10 health professions that you get a Medicare card and you can tap it and the government will pay a portion. And we were trying to fight to get that for a while, and then we just decided it was in the too hard basket. We don't have registration. Massage is not registered, but we're trying to get a co-regulatory body within the associations.
Yeah.
We can't kill people, so we're not dangerous enough to be registered, which is kind of nice not to be in that pot.
Right.
The health funds are a big marketing play for because we go, look, come in, you get $25 or $35 back on your treatment, which to a lot of people love that. And at the end of the calendar year or the end of the financial year, all of a sudden you get booked up to your eyeballs because people are going, oh my God, I've still got $450 worth of massage to spend in my calendar year, which is
That's
good
nice.
for you.
Yeah, that is nice. How is massage sort of being perceived by other healthcare professionals, the physiotherapists community and all that kind of stuff? Is there a fair amount of integration, or is it still a lot of silos and not communicating a lot?
Yeah. Physiotherapy probably is the least most integrative for massage. There's a big disconnect. The chiropractors and the naturopaths are probably the closest alignment, because they'll go, look, have a massage, then come in and I'll do an adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Or the massage will do well to maintain your body whilst we're nurturing you with whatever herbs, medications that you need. We
Yeah.
do link in well with osteopaths.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often we'll have hubs where you might have a couple of exercise physiologists, a couple of physios, a massage therapist, a chiropractor, maybe like if you're attached to the hospital, you might have a nurse that's involved with cardiac health. So it depends on where they are. But there's quite a few in Australia popping up all over the place where they have everyone in one flagship.
Yeah.
But I think we'd be the fighters between physio and massage, because they kind of see us as not having, because there's no evidence behind doing any touch,
Mm-hmm.
or for the greater, especially the new physiotherapists. Physiotherapists in Australia currently come out with almost no touch education.
Oh, really?
Yeah, almost
That
none.
seems odd to me, because the perception that a lot of us have over here in the States is that a lot of the physiotherapists in Australia were doing a lot more manual therapy type of thing. So that's no
Yeah.
longer the case, or not accurate?
They used to loads, and the older skill set, absolutely, they're all hands on the table,
Uh-huh.
loosening things off, then give you an exercise, might do some taping, might do some stretching.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, it seems to be all exercise only.
Mm-hmm.
Very few will do any manual glides, neuromuscular techniques, muscle energy techniques. Quite a few of them will do an extra course into dry needling and do some myofascial dry needling. So they'll needle and then they'll give an exercise.
Yeah.
So it's great for us, because we're getting more and more and more clients and patients into us, because they're going, I'm not getting what I want. I'm not actually getting to massage and loosen the tissue.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
It's interesting development, the way that this is growing. I'm always curious to hear from people in other areas how that is growing and changing, in the degree of integration, because I think there's certainly a lot of movement away from a lot of hands-on and manual therapy in numerous professions, mainly because it takes a lot of time, and it's doesn't seem to be as cost effective to be able to do that for many of these situations. So but
true.
like you said, that's one of the things that is good for the business of the manual therapists that are doing it, because people still want that very badly, and they want to have those services available.
I was with my physiotherapist a week or so ago, just doing some work on this cranky hip of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And she's up on the table doing some adductive work, glides, loosening, mobilizing. And I'm listening to the guy across in the other room, and he's talking to his patient about, they come from Dalby, which is regional rural Australia, and they've been pigging, or what have they been doing? They've been fishing for barra. And I said to her, that work over there, he's getting as much work, that integration that they're having in the conversation whilst there's touch. He's like, how do you measure that? Because that's actually making an effect in that treatment room.
Yeah.
And he said 100%. That it's not just the hands-on, it's that human interrelationship where there's trust, nurturing. You're getting an understanding of what's happening with the tissue while you're talking, what's happening, is there, what is happening to that person.
Yeah.
And it's a great wellness model.
Yeah. I'm hopeful and curious to see where some of these models will expand and develop for education in our fields in the future. And I think we've got so much to learn from what the other professions have been through, and also what each of us are growing into. So it will be curious to see where it does continue to grow for us. But I want to. What's that?
Hard to teach it and assess it.
Yes. Yeah. Indeed. Well, I want to get back to your path for a little bit and talk some more about some of the things that you've been doing, because I know you've been teaching for a lot of years, been doing a lot of different types of things that in your work. And one of the things I know you've focused a good deal of attention on is your courses in Chapman's reflexes. And That is something that I know almost zero about. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about that. So if you can kind of give us some framework about, I remember first off, reading and encountering the concepts of Chapman's reflexes back in Leon Chato's one of his very first books, the blue soft tissue manipulation book. I think it's out of
Yep.
print now, but that was kind of like an early one for lots of us back in the 80s. And that's the first time I remember hearing about that. But I have not seen, heard, or ever taken a course in this kind of stuff. And I was hoping maybe you can tell us a little bit about your work, your approach there, and what that is about.
Sure, I'd love to. So Frank Chapman was an osteopath in the 30s and 40s, and he specialized in visceral work. So Chapman's reflexes are otherwise known as neurolymphatic points. So the neurolymphatic arcs, he was uncovering if there was congestion within the lymph system, it would affect the reflex arc of the nerve. And by him stimulating it at the most distal point, so into that superficial fascial region, it would mobilize and get some more motility in through the lymph and stimulate the neural arc, and then the organ would improve its quality.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about what that pressure would be like? Is this small contact surface pressure work, kind of like trigger point type of thing, or moderate level pressure? What is it like?
Yeah, and that's part of that thing that Leon was talking about with the pressure and touch. Fred Mitchell talked about it because he was involved in it as well. And it's moderate touch. So it's actually, if you're putting fingers on your skin and then you're mobilizing the skin on top of the underlying surface. So you're not sliding across the skin. You don't do it with oil. It's a non-oil based.
Okay.
So, and it's pretty much well, Newton's third law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It's where you feel that first point of resistance, and that's when you start mobilizing. And there's specific points that were actually marked out by George Goodhart, who first discovered that the area that affected the stomach also stimulated the pectoral fibers of the clavicular head of the pectoralis muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And that muscle became strong. So he then mapped pretty much most of the muscles that they use for Touch for Health. So Touch for Health can be either emotional or it can be the applied kinesiology side. So the applied kinesiology is the model I work from a defense pattern, because everybody comes in with a level of defense, in my experience. Anyone who's got pain is generally because whatever general position that their body has been in, we start adapting through fear. So we all see those shoulders rolled forward, chin tucked in, hips closed, and it then modifies our natural movement patterns.
Yeah.
And we start seeing maybe the pathological resting position in the joints, not quite sitting where it should be. Maybe we're getting a little bit of compression in where the facets would normally move in a glide. Whatever it looks like, there's changes in the body that creates some kind of pain response. So by working the Chapman's reflexes, I do a strength test for the muscles that are primarily defensive. So hip flexion, hip extension, trunk lateral flexion, lower limbs, mobility of the thorax to get into extension versus closed down, neck, abdominals. Whatever's weak, I will then facilitate the specific arc, which is what I teach in the courses. So we might go, well, a very simple way to work it would be, if the hip flexors are short and tight. So we all know that we get that stretch weakness, right? So they're really strong in a seated position, but when we start moving them in the leg into an extension, the psoas iliacus rectus femoris don't probably maintain a pelvis that's really stable. So we're losing protection of the vital organs inside. We then have what I love the term, an amnesic gluteal extensors. They're fighting with that antagonist inhibition, and the pelvis becomes more unstable. So our hamstrings will naturally hold on, tighten up a little bit, just to maintain a little bit of stability and control at the ischial tuberosities. So quite often I teach this, or I'll do this as a trick or whatever. If I'm talking to somebody in a podcast, I'll try to do a toe touch, stand up and try to touch toes. if there's a reduction, and anyone who's listening to this, I would encourage you to try it. So you're going to go down gentle toe, see how far you can get down, whether you're getting mid-shin to your toes, whatever. And then I want you to stimulate the neural arcs, which are going to be responsible for your hip flexion, and that is either side of the umbilicus, just 1 centimeter out or half an inch, and about 3 fingers, and you just sink into the tissue till you feel that bone, and just we're stimulating. We're doing vigorous but not hard. So we're actually stimulating the nerve endpoints.
Okay.
You've done that for 30 seconds. You don't want to be doing it for much longer because it nullifies it.
Yeah.
And then drop down and do a hamstring length test again. See how far you can go down and touch toes. It's quite remarkable how much distance that some people get. You can get up to 6 inches of improved range because we've turned on the neural arc for the hip flexors, which means there's length, which means the protection model's not quite as aggressive, which means that the amnesic gluteals can then perform a little bit better quality in extension, so the hamstrings don't need to be on to stabilize the pelvis.
Yeah. So would you say that there's particular patient populations or client populations that you would tend to do this type of work with, or do you do this on a lot of people, or like what's a kind of person that you would say that comes in like, oh yeah, this person's going to probably respond well to this particular approach?
Yeah, anyone who has stress, lower back pain, neck, shoulder pain, chronic overuse, that's a big one. So someone might come in who does repetitive upper body work. Exercise, people who do a lot of running, walking, swimmers, not so much. People who've got good oxygenation, people who have got very good diaphragmatic work, tend to be less of a problem than people who have got poor diaphragmatic control. You know, those people who are the slouchy forwards, they need strength. And in the olden days, I used to massage everything, loosen everything off to the point of overkill, as we all do. When we start massaging, we all start really deep, like we stick our thumbs and elbows in to try to kill people, because bash that muscle. And then as you start to progress your knowledge, you go, that's not that smart. So let's gentle up, feel for the tissue, feel for response. But I will never loosen a rhomboid. I refuse to come in and destabilize the scapular stabilizers anymore, not unless there's real reason for it to happen. But I will open through the chest. I'll strengthen the thoracic. I'll actually strengthen the support for the thoracic flexors so that their natural resting length is longer. Then I'll loosen off the pectoralis anterior, latissimus dorsi, whatever that looks like. Definitely arms. We don't do enough work on arms, I believe. We should be always working biceps down through to fingers. And then do some scapular stability. And then if they've still got a problem with the rhomboid, we might have a little tweak, but that would be the last program or treatment that I would ever do.
Yeah, it seems so common that people come in and say like, oh, my upper back is just killing me, right, that area right between my back. So you're saying that that's not where you're going to target. You're going to target elsewhere to kind of get that addressed or settled through another pathway then, essentially.
Yeah, it's the same as saying, all right, so if you're having a heart attack and you've got pain in your jaw and down your arm, am I going to be treating your jaw and your arm? No. And the other thing, people come in and say, my pain is in my right lower back. Got it right in there. And then I'll find that they've actually got the weakness on the left-hand side. And they're like, but that's not where I'm feeling it. So that's fine. I want you to imagine if you have got a broken, just say you've got a broken right leg and you're on a push bike, which leg is going to do the work? The right one or the left one that's the healthy one? Okay, well, the left one. So which one's going to fatigue first? Which one is going to show overuse, repetitive fatigue? It's not going to be the right
on the left side. Yeah.
And they normally go, okay, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Because all clients need an aha moment.
Yeah.
Because they won't do their treatment otherwise. They won't do home care if they
Mm-hmm.
don't have a aha.
Yeah. I'm curious too about this particular type of work because of your description of it being significantly impacting the neurolymphatic systems and sort of the kind of, recognizing that all these things are tied together to a great extent. We've got so many people with these chronic pain problems, the fibromyalgia type of conditions and others, very sort of persistent chronic pain things that don't seem to have a really good explanation. Do you find these types of approaches helpful in addressing that kind of thing?
I'd love to say yes, but it's so hit and miss. Fibromyalgia is one of those conditions that has so it's like it has so many tentacles, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a lot in here that we
Yeah.
need to address for them, like that the etiology can be so different. People have always said, oh, can this help for Parkinson's or can this help for multiple sclerosis? I'm going, not that I can see that will hold it in a, it was weak the first time I tested the glutes, and then the second time the glutes were amazing. But I have had quite a few clients that have come to see me who have got Parkinson's, and we've woken up the arcs, and getting them to stand up and walk around, the comments have been, feel much more stable, feel like everything is lighter, feeling like I'm more in myself. So to me, I'm happy if they can feel that they're less likely to be a fall risk.
Yeah.
Then God, do it.
Yeah.
We used to know it as like, I've only ever known it as neurolymphatic points, and Frank Chapman died quite young. So in honor of him, his business partner, Charles Owens, coined them Chapman's reflexes. So that's why I hold the term.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But the neurolymphatic points are something that back then, but are they mechanoreceptors now, or are they Ruffini? Like what are they now? Because back then those terms weren't ever used, and it's hard to pinpoint. Is it one thing, and does it matter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, we're really, so many of us are grappling with a lot of these things of recognizing that some of our former explanations are falling short of giving us a good understanding of the theoretical models that we may have adhered, for many of us, stronger than we should for a long time. But things work. We find certain types of things or ways of working that seem to get really good results. And I think that's one of the things that I really want to encourage people to keep in mind is that, it's going to be a long time probably before we have really good, solid research to understand exactly why certain types of things work. And we'll continue along the way to try to be, improving our accuracy as best we can. But the reality is we're probably going to change our minds a good bit along the way too, as more things come out. So
there's a great quote by Leon Chadow that I put in, and it says, lack of proof of efficacy is not the same as proof of lack of efficacy.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant because it's exactly right. How do we know what we're doing is actually what we're doing?
Yeah. And we can have certain ideas that, this is what's happening here, but then you talk to the practitioner next door who's doing, acupuncture or whatever, and they'll tell you it's a completely different thing that's happening there when you do this based on it's the models, the different lens of bias that we all happen to look for.
Yeah, so true. But we hate for something, aren't we?
Yeah, there was a study that came out a number of years ago, and I can't remember exactly the title of it, but it was something to the effect of, it was about back pain, and it was looking at a comparison study of different treatment approaches, and it was something to the effect of, low back pain, what you have is who you see, and they were essentially saying, you go see a chiropractor and you're going to have a subluxation. You go see an acupuncturist and you got a chi blockage, and you see a massage therapist and you have trigger point problems. And we all probably have a piece of the accurate picture there, but probably not the whole thing. And there could be numerous ways that things are happening there. So
it's it's funny because when I was going through college and I used to teach, when I was teaching, I'd go, the the region that you are struggling to understand are the clients that are going to walk in through your door. Because it always would happen. I'd go, oh, I'm terrible. I'm having real problems with working out shoulders. And the next 10 people that come in, 6 of them would have shoulder pathologies.
Yeah.
You know, like, thank you, universe, whatever you're doing.
Yeah. That's right. Feeding us those things to learn. Yeah. So I want to take on a little bit slightly different track here too, and pick your brain a little bit, because I am also kind of an education fanatic and looking at, how things are taught and how we get a lot of the concepts across, knowing that, for lots of us, we've experienced people who are magnificent practitioners who get wonderful things done, but also when you get into the classroom, they're not always the best educators are transmitting that information to everybody. And so, I've always tried to focus a lot of attention on learning how things work well in different environments. I've noticed that you are doing, a fair amount of your teaching still, as always, in the classroom, but you're also doing some online teaching stuff as well. And I was curious to hear your experiences of trying to teach and get across some of those concepts in those 2 very different types of environments.
Yeah, and palpation work as we do. We're body workers and we're teaching body work. It's tricky.
Yeah.
I find that, like, the one thing with online stuff is you do not want to do death by PDF or death by PowerPoint. So it's got to be integrative, and it's got to be something that they are doing. So kinesthetic. So when I designed, I've always had the 3 online packages: the silver, which is just for people who want to dab in the water, see what the Chapman's reflexes are, that neurolymphatic work is. Do some of the quizzes, because there's 5 sections in those modules. Just tap through those and then just an interest article. So then there's 2 more that are more depth, and they both include having to provide online assessments. So they're actually, I'm watching them like it would be like we are here. And you're providing hi Paula, it's Candace here, and I've got my friend Jessica, and she's on the table, and we're going to go through the testing for the diaphragm, blah, 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 and the stimulation, so that I can actually see what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then I will always send a video back. It was great. I saw that. If you look at 1 minute 26, check that out again and watch what your client did with their arm. They did some internal rotation, which you probably didn't see, but they were cheating. So we give always feedback.
Nice. Yeah.
And the courses are all the quizzes are all mix and match, or they've got to move things from here to there. It's not just a reading, like they'll highlight on an image and it will flick, and the information will be behind it. So they're not sitting scrolling.
Yeah.
And then I've got when we hit our fabulous pandemic, I changed to have either an evergreen or a live. So we've actually got the course that I videoed as a webinar. Then we come in and we go through it. So I'll be here with you and whoever many students, and we're going through each of the modules. And then we'll go, okay, stop. If you've got someone in the clinic with you, or in here with you, you're going to do that treatment, the assessment, and then the facilitation while we're all watching. So it's actually live. Tricky to do live.
Yeah.
Just because the time zones are so horrendous.
Yeah, I've certainly found that there are things that work better in the online environment, and things that definitely work better in the classroom. It's a bit like comparing apples and oranges. If things are done really well in each one of those environments, because there's things that are just, very, very difficult to duplicate in each one of those places about doing things that they both do well. I mean, I've got students in our online program all over the globe that would not be able to come and do an in-person course. And when we do the in-person courses, there are things that come up with questions and discussions, or quick little demonstrations that are very difficult to reproduce online. So, everything seems to have its pros and cons for sure.
Yeah, I know that most therapists, when you talk to them, they want to engage in something that is manual, just because, like, that's why who we are. We're not accountants. Like
Yeah.
we're drawn to body work. We're drawn to doing kinesthetic work. So there's somehow we've got to add that kinesthesia into the teaching to satisfy that emotional component.
Yeah. Right. So I also want to ask, you've done a pretty fair amount of globetrotting, being around teaching in different countries and different places here. Are there any sort of unique experiences or things that you learned about massage in different countries or different places that kind of particularly stood out for you as you experienced the practitioners in these different locales?
Yeah, my first experience was going over to an AMTA conference in Cincinnati, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just mind-blowing that there was so many variations of what educational. No, we can teach here, but we can't teach there, and that's under beauty, and that's not health, and that's. I go, what the? How the heck do you people travel? Like, but clearly you don't, because it would be a pain jinger to be able to try to go from. And I think one of them was like North Carolina and South Carolina have got two different things in your.
Yeah, we have a lot of that mess. Yeah.
Yeah, horrible. And Leon Chattow was actually teaching. There was another course I was in Winnipeg, and he was making comments about. He was showing some muscle energy technique work, and he made a comment that the Australians seem to have a broader knowledge. He said, "I've always found that the Aussie massage therapists are some of the best in the industry," but which is very lovely of him to say that. But I think it's probably just because we all kind of learn the same thing. We've all got the same length of time. We've all got to cover off certain components within you have to be a registered training organisation. You have to follow the health training package. So there's not a variety of everywhere. I'm just trying to think. I've always picked up one or two skills from I'll be teaching a class. I might be doing something on muscle energy techniques for the lateral trunk, and then a therapist in there will go, well, do you want to see what I do? Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be just a variation, but everyone's got great touch.
Yeah. That made me think when you were talking a moment ago, when we were talking about the difficulties of, traveling between different areas. Do you have an idea how many massage schools and or training programs there are in Australia currently? What the number is at?
Yeah. We've got training schools. There's probably there'd be at least 4 in each of the major cities. That's 4 times 7, and then there'll be a few satellites as well. So I'd probably say there'd be well over 50 schools.
Yeah.
You got to remember that the middle of Australia is nothing.
There's not a lot there. Yeah. Yes, we're talking about around the edges. Yeah.
Rock.
Right. Well, I mean, there inherently lies a big part of the problem for us because, we currently have, I don't think anybody really knows the numbers now, but the latest estimates, that we're hovering somewhere around 900 schools in the U.S. right now.
Oh,
and
wow.
That's one of the reasons there's such a patchwork of training, because it's just incredibly difficult to get any kind of consistency among that many different training programs. And then, like you said, we have 50 different states, and many of them have very different requirements and limitations. So it really does make the consistent standards of training challenging to try to access, for sure.
And that's the health training, that's the registered training organisation. So before we had our RTOs, we had loads and loads. Every corner would whack up a school because they
really?
they didn't have to cover off a government regulatory model.
Yeah.
And now they go, well, hang on, that's going to cost me a lot more time. We get the auditing, there's a lot happening where they just kind of go, well, I couldn't be bothered anymore.
Yeah.
Did lose a few really good schools. We had a great woman, Meta Sorensen, who teaches Lomi Lomi and Kahuna. And she had a brilliant course. She had these gorgeous therapists who had most amazing techniques in both of those art forms. And she just stopped because she said, I'm not going to have to rewrite my whole training for the government. So just not going to do that. So
yeah. Yeah. Was that sort of like, in terms of, we had a huge bubble of schools here in the United States that seemed to peak around 2007, 2008, somewhere around there. When we got up to close to 1,600 schools, I think was the number at that time. And it was just like, it was just insane. Was it like around that time that you were seeing the largest number? I'm curious if you had a similar practitioner bubble at that time.
I think it was before 2005, because that's when the health training packages first came in. So it would be 1980s up through to 2005. We had a lot of schools. Like nowadays, it's a coffee shop. Every corner's got a coffee shop on it.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Come in and do an 8-week course, like from 6 to 9. 8 weeks, done. Here's your certificate. Off you go. Have fun.
Right.
Yeah. So anyone could do it now. It's a totally different model.
Yeah. So, well, it will be interesting to see, and it'll be a little bit of time probably before we see the impacts of what that's going to be. But like, what do you kind of see as the outlook for massage in Australia? Do you see it as going in a positive direction still, with both access to good care by the public and good training for the practitioners?
I think we've got stable training for the practitioners. They're not. I think the old day therapists of my ilk, once we die out, the skill sets will be much less, because we just had those skills thrust upon us. They'll still be safe, and they'll still be lovely to come in and have a massage. They'll still have people who are interested in doing their professional education that will include more knowledge and more skill sets. So there's a lot of therapists now, they love doing they'll do a certificate in dry needling. So we're getting will stick needles into the client. I've got that within my degree, but I don't choose to do dry needling. I find that I could get just as much effects with what I currently do, so I just don't choose to.
Yeah.
There's risk around, sharps, etc., hazards, and I don't want to add that.
Yeah, we can't puncture the skin here in the U.S. as massage therapists. I don't think there's any.
Come to Australia, you can throw them in like darts down here.
So
do a quick course, and then you can jam those things in.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, what would you, if you had to give advice to a practitioner who's entering the field now, what kind of advice would you give to somebody for that, where it's going in the future?
Yeah. I think I'd probably say, and that's a really good question, I hadn't thought about it, but try to when you first start treating, honor the client that comes in. Allow them to come in with whatever baggage they've got, and without any, don't assess them aggressively, or if they're late, so therefore I'm going to rush this treatment, that kind of stuff. Feel free to give free treatment until you can build up a body of people that come into your room, because we need to, doing something for nothing is better than doing nothing and wanting to get it. And when you're touching people, touch them like you're touching your mother. Don't touch them like they're a footballer, unless they're a footballer. Just be mindful of your pressure, because we're creating inflammation to create repair, but there's a level of tissue damage that we don't want to cross. And when we start, we all work really deeply, and it's just, you're wasting time in your skill sets by doing that. Start listening with your fingers. We used to do this thing. Try this, boys and girls. We just get a piece of paper and a hair and put it between the paper. You have probably done it as well, and you palpate until you can feel a hair. Yeah. And 2 pieces of paper to see if you feel a hair. 3, how many sheets you could put between that hair and your fingers and palpate. Learn your palpation skills. Yeah.
It is interesting. I do think there is a generalized trend across a lot of the soft tissue therapy approaches to less intensive type of work nowadays than was done not that long ago. I think we've found there's not always so much benefit in, trying to dig down, dig deep, and dig things out. That there's other ways to get the responses that we're really looking for from people, more so from the nervous system.
And if you're going to go deep because you need to go deep, go slow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the key is time under tension here. So just if you're sink in, wait, and then just like the tissue will allow you, because the nervous system will calm down enough to take some of that tension off, and you'll be able to get into those deeper areas and get off the psoas. Like get off the psoas. You're all over bowel. Get back off. Just stop.
Jill and I did a whole episode about that, and that comes up frequently in different classes, and it starts some very vigorous debates amongst people. But I'm kind of in that camp of like, we need to back off of that a little bit. So
play with iliacus before you come deep into the psoas. The psoas is a stabilizer anyway, more than a hip flexor. Really?
So, yeah. Interesting. Well, Paula, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find out more about you, your work, what you're up to, and everything? Where can they connect with you?
Sure. Well, I've got my website, which is just look up Paula Nutting, because it's actually called Your Musculoskeletal Specialist. So when I set up my website, I didn't think about how long it takes to type in Your Musculoskeletal Specialist. So just look up Paula Nutting and you'll find it.
All right, and that is Nutting, correct?
Yes.
Okay, for everybody. Yeah.
We also, you'll find links to the courses, so online, live, and our evergreens, so the pre-recordings. There's also my mentorship group, which is a monthly program where I help people get through like whatever they need to do, like to move them forward, move their dial forward in whatever clinical practice. And then there's free content in YouTube. So YouTube Paula Nutting, and you'll get stuff like DIYs that I used to set up for a lot of my patients and clients, and then some stuff for therapists to use. So there's plenty of stuff.
Yeah, lots of good resources. So I would encourage everybody to go take a look at some of that stuff. So, well, always a delight to spend some time with you and hang out. So thank you so much for joining us here on our conversation this afternoon on the Thinking Practitioner. Paul, is delightful to have you.
Yeah, it's always fun. Love it. And hopefully we'll get a chance to see you in June when I'm over in your side of the pond.
That would be great. Indeed, that would be great. Yes. And do remember, everyone, that Books of Discovery has been a part of the massage therapy and bodywork world for over 25 years. Nearly 3,000 schools around the globe teach with their textbooks, e-textbooks, and digital resources. Books of Discovery likes to say learning adventures start here, and they find that same spirit here on the Thinking Practitioner podcast. And they're proud to support our work, knowing that we share the mission to bring the massage and bodywork community thought-provoking and enlivening content that advances our profession. Instructors of manual therapy education programs can request complimentary copies of Books of Discovery textbooks to review for use in their programs. So please reach out at booksofdiscovery.com, and listeners can explore their content collection of learning resources for anatomy, pathology, kinesiology, physiology, ethics, and business mastery at booksofdiscovery.com, where Thinking Practitioner listeners can save 15% by entering Thinking at checkout. So thank you again to all of our listeners. You can stop by our sites for show notes, video transcripts, and any extras. You can find that over on my site at academyofclinicalmassage.com, and also over on Till's site at advanced-trainings.com. If you have comments, questions, or things you'd like to hear us talk about, just record a quick voice memo on your phone or send us an email over to info@thethinkingpractitioner.com, and look for us on social media. You can find me under my name, Whitney Lowe, and also Till under his, Till Luca, on social as well. And lastly, if you would, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, as it does help other people find the show, and you can hear us on Spotify, Podbean, or wherever else you happen to listen. And please do share the word and tell a friend, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thanks a lot.